Hello, beautiful humans. I would like the record to reflect that I did sit down in my chair at 5:35. I'm pretty proud of myself for that. Now, admittedly, I wasn't 100% ready to go. I had to jump back up and go gather my notebook from my room because I was taking notes while folding clothes, while packing. And you may remember, if you were here during the live stream, I did say I was going to schedule my live stream for 5:35, and I was in my chair at 5:35. So, hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to the Midlife Revolution. I'm your host, Megan Connor. And it is Thursday, September 4th, 2025. Today, in the Donna Adelson case out of Tallahassee, Florida, we saw closing statements from both the state and the defense. We also saw the fantastic rebuttal from the state. I'm going to play some of this for you. But basically, if you were not watching the live stream today, what I want to tell you is that I listened to Jackie Fulford for over an hour so that you didn't have to. And if you were there with me, congratulations. I hope that you have done something to wipe your brain clean. It was tough. It was real tough. And I'm happy to report that I'm almost all the way packed for CrimeCon, but not to worry, my flight's been delayed. So there's that. Just crossing things off my list over here because I accomplished some things. And I was actually ready to do my recap at about 4:45 when I got a call that a kid needed a ride and a trip to the store. So, yada, yada. Joe Tall Chief, don't worry. You can run to the restroom and come back and catch up on 2X. No problem. Hey, Eliza. Hey, everyone loves angels. Angel Eyes. Hey, Kiki. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining me this late afternoon. It's 5:40-ish San Antonio time. And I put the live stream up early because when I was checking other channels around 4:30, I saw that everybody else was on verdict watch and still had their streams and their chats going. So I should have just let mine run, but I didn't. So here we are. So I decided to start the stream a little bit early. And then after I finish my recap, probably late tonight or early tomorrow morning, I will go back and cut off the watching part at the beginning so that people coming to this recap later won't have to sit through that or fast forward through it. Now, it was pretty interesting today. We had jury instructions given by the judge to the jury. We had a little bit of business prior to that, which I'll talk about. And then Georgia Kappelman delivered a fantastic closing statement. She went through the entire timeline of the case in a very concise way. And what I loved is that towards the end, when she was wrapping up, she gave all of the examples of everything that was direct evidence. And then she talked about the difference between direct and circumstantial evidence. I love that she did that because even I was thinking to myself, this is somewhat of a circumstantial case. Then Jackie Fulford got up and okay, so first of all, let me say this. I like for people to do a good job, even when, they're doing a job that's, opposed to when they're not on my side, essentially. I like it when defense attorneys do a good job. It's the same reason why I've never been affiliated officially with any sort of sports franchise, except for the Spurs when they were good. That's not right now, but that's a different rabbit hole for another time. I enjoy a good contest. So I like to watch sports. I like to watch Olympics. I like to watch all of these things. And I don't really necessarily have a favorite team. It's just that I like to see a good contest. So I like it when somebody does their job well. Jackie Fulford did not do her job well. I'm not being critical of her just because she is on the defense side, and I believe Donna Adelson to be guilty, allegedly, in my opinion. I'm saying this because I really think she truly did a terrible job. And we'll get into why. And I'm going to play just a couple of clips of hers, but definitely not very many, because at some point, it just got to the point where you know, you may have heard the expression, maybe not, between attorneys, where they say, if the facts are on your side, pound the facts. If the law is on your side, pound the law. And if neither one is on your side, pound the table. Well, Jackie Fulford spent a good 45 minutes literally pounding the table, yelling at the jurors, and then seemingly manically switching to a quieter voice before going back to being angry, pounding, clapping at the jurors. It just was awful, in my opinion. I've seen some bad closing statements before, namely from people I'm related to. But this was a professional attorney. She's currently a funeral home director, so maybe she should go back to doing that full time. Anyway, we started out the day a little earlier than expected. It shouldn't be unexpected at this point, but I did start my stream early, expecting the judge to be early, and he was early, but Court TV didn't catch it. And so we missed a little bit at the very beginning. But basically, there was a discussion about the calendars that Josh Zellman tried really hard to get in at the last second after Donna Adelson decided not to testify. They had information in those calendars that they wanted to get into the record, but now that Donna's not testifying, they didn't have anybody to bring it in as evidence, and so he asked the state to consider it as evidence that they would admit but not publish. Well, the judge said after reviewing everything, he found that there was nothing that was admissible as evidence. Then there was sort of an obligatory renewed motion for acquittal. They said the same thing that they said before. The defense said, you know, we're going to move for an acquittal. And the judge said, I've already considered all of your arguments, and I'm going to deny that motion. Then the defense still wanted to bring in Officer Franklin, who was an officer working in the facility where Donna Adelson is being held. The defense believed that that officer may have had some information that would have been favorable to their case, and they were trying to compel this officer to come in and testify, even though she had not been subpoenaed. And so they visited that issue this morning, and essentially, the judge said, no, we can't hear from Officer Franklin. Then he gave another warning to the gallery. Now, this is the third time that the judge has reprimanded the gallery throughout the proceedings. And he just reminded them that they could not make any gestures or any facial movements or nodding of their heads or anything like that that implied that they agreed with what was being said by either side. And then he said, no cell phones. Well, guess what, guys? Cell phones went off anyway during the day. He was probably pretty upset about that. So then we went through jury instructions, and the only part of jury instructions that I'm going to cover are just the elements that are necessary to meet the state's burden of proof. So there are 3 charges in this case. The first one is first-degree murder, and there are 3 elements that have to be met there. 1 is that Dan Markel was killed. 2 is that that his death was caused by an act of the defendant. And the third one is that it has to be premeditated. That's what gives it the first degree designation, is that premeditation. The second charge is conspiracy to commit murder. And that goes to 2 elements. There has to be intent to commit a murder, to commit first degree murder, meaning an intent to commit a premeditated murder. And then secondly, they have to find that the defendant agreed, conspired, combined, or what's the 4th word? Confederated with either Charlie Adelson or Catherine McDaniel or others to commit this crime. And the judge noted as well, and these are standard instructions that he's reading. He's not going off the cuff or going rogue here. He says, that this does not, like the agreement, the conspiracy does not have to be expressed in actual words, and the defendant does not have to do any act in furtherance of the crime. So she doesn't have to actually say it, and she doesn't have to take any action. Just has to agree that it's going to happen. The third element, or the third charge, is solicitation to commit murder. And so the two elements are, it has to be a solicitation to commit first-degree murder, and that the defendant had to command, encourage, hire, or require someone else to do this. And what I noted that was important about this jury instruction is that if Donna paid, you have to consider her as a principal. And that means you must consider all of the actions of the party she paid as her own actions. So if she pays for it, it's just the same as pulling the trigger. If she pays for it, it's just the same as arranging it. It's just the same as driving the person. All of that is the same. You have to consider her actions as the same because she paid for it. Now, I happen to think that there's very strong direct evidence that she paid for it. And so somebody asked me this after the stream, is that, do I think the state met their burden? I know for sure they met their burden on number 2 or number 3. If I was a juror, though, I would have a hard time with first-degree murder. But we're going to go over some of the direct evidence that Georgia Kappelman listed, and maybe, you know, as I'm deliberating as a juror, maybe that would have convinced me. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I still do have a little tiny bit of a cough from allergy stuff, and you can tell that my voice is not quite back to normal yet. Then the judge talked to the jury about reasonable doubt. And again, these are standard instructions that he's reading. Then he talks to them about witness credibility. You have to consider whether the witness had an opportunity to observe the evidence that they're bringing in. You have to consider whether they have an interest in the outcome. Does their evidence agree with the other evidence that's been presented? Was there a pressure or a threat for them to say certain things? And are their statements inconsistent, or are they consistent? And then he talked a little bit about expert witnesses and said that they can give their opinion on the area that they're an expert in, and you can choose to believe them or to not believe them. You can choose to believe all of what they said or just part of what they said. And then he gave a caution to note whether or not the expert witness had any vested interest in the outcome of the case. So with that, she got started with an excellent tribute to Dan Markel, and I'd like to play a little bit of that. But what I have kept in mind throughout this entire trial is that the Adelson family is an enmeshed family system. And what that means is that there's going to be an unhealthy attachment where the individuals in the system don't have their own identity except within the system. Leaving the system is not allowed, and behaving in a way that's not acceptable to the ruler of the system is also not allowed. And we heard Rob Adelson testify to this, that Donna had ideas about how things should be done. And if you did things her way, everything was fine. And if you did not do things her way, everything was not fine. And Robert is the oldest son. He has exited the family system. He's been away from them for quite some time. And his testimony, I think, was really crucial and pivotal to understanding Donna Adelson. So now I'm going to switch tabs because I need to show you the masterful Georgia Kappelman right. 1 second. Yeah, and I'll just I'll just pause from playing the video for 1 second to say, Eliza says Rob was an early victim. I think absolutely. Donna really wanted Rob. Well, so Rob was in love with this woman. He wanted to marry her, but Donna didn't approve because she wasn't Jewish. I believe she was from India, if I remember correctly. And so Rob broke up with her. And then he found a nice Jewish girl. He married her, immediately knew that he'd made a mistake. And they, I think, had their marriage annulled. And then Rob went back to his original love and left the family, basically. Lost his family because of that, I think. Catherine, thanks for asking. I mentioned this earlier in chat, but don't you think Donna chose Jackie on purpose, knowing how terrible she was, so she could claim ineffective assistance of counsel so she could get a new trial? I don't think so, personally. My opinion is that you wouldn't purposely pick a terrible attorney. I think she probably believed that Jackie would do a great job. She probably came very highly recommended, all of that stuff. I don't know why you would want to go through 2 trials. But it is, it's interesting to think about. But I don't know why Donna would, I don't know what her motivation would be to stand trial twice. But yeah, it's interesting to try and think about the mental gymnastics that these types of controlling people go through and their motivations for doing things. And as I often said during my dumb cousins trial, their priorities are so screwed up, and for instance, Donna's priorities, the choices that she made, were so easily detectable, but she really thought she wasn't going to get caught. And that's why she didn't prioritize certain things, for example. So thank you for that comment. All right, please enjoy Georgia Kappelman for just a couple minutes here.
Of a bitter divorce from their mother. Defense called witnesses to come in here and give you a...
Can you guys hear that? Okay. I'm worried about the sound. Let me just adjust one thing. Donna's controlling, no way.
This is Dan Markel. He's the victim in this case. A son, a brother, a colleague, a mentor, a professor, a friend, but most of all, a father, an Abba, a dad, a dedicated and loving father whose downfall was brought about by the fact that his number one priority was maximizing his time with those little boys in the wake of a bitter divorce from their mother. Defense called witnesses to come in here and give you an expert opinion that his divorce and the subsequent litigation was not contentious. Not contentious to whom? It was contentious to Dan Markel. It was contentious to Wendi Adelson. And it was contentious to this defendant. And then after telling you what a great guy Dan Markel was in opening statements, they called witnesses to tell you what a pain in the butt he was. And he was a pain in the butt to those people, those awful lawyers that can't even admit that divorces are emotionally charged. He was a pain in their butts. He was a pain in Wendy's butt, and he was a pain in Donna's butt. Why? Because this was his life we were talking about. Dan Markel was not a file on some lawyer's desk. He was a real person who cared passionately about every scrap of paper in that divorce file. He wasn't some bumbling idiot. He was a Harvard-educated law professor. And yeah, he was making it as difficult as possible for this defendant to get her non-negotiable, which just also happened to be Dan Markel's non-negotiable, those 2 little boys.
So I just want to say thank you to Georgia Kappelman for humanizing Dan Markel. And that's what we're here for. Justice for Dan and for his kids and for his family members. Georgia went on to recap the other defenses, the other strategies that the defense put up, like this extortion idea, things like that. And then she said Dan Markel is still the only victim of this crime, despite all of the whining from the defense. Then she showed pictures, I assume. We didn't see them on the screen, thank goodness. She started out by saying, this is Dan Markel, and showed the picture of him. And then she said to the jury, this is Dan Markel before the incident happened, and this is Dan Markel after. And I'm assuming that she showed an autopsy photo, which that's something that's really going to stand out in the jury's mind. Then she talked about Wendi Adelson saying that her parents had had more reason to hate Dan than anyone. And that was during her police interview after the incident happened. Then Georgia said that Donna Adelson is all about psychological warfare. She cared more about the divorce than Wendi did. And Charlie certainly didn't care about Wendy's divorce. Charlie didn't care about a win against Dan Markel. Charlie cared about golfing and sports cars and girls and partying. She went on with this litany of things. So sorry. But we do know that even though Charlie had a litany of girlfriends, the number one woman in his life was his mother. She also said that Charlie can talk to Wendi in a way that Donna couldn't. Donna decides what's best, and Charlie is the problem solver. Donna gleefully reported to her son Robert about delivering the divorce filing right before Dan was about to go on stage to deliver a speech. Then we have all of the divorce emails, repeated threats and warnings from Donna Adelson towards Dan Markel. And what she said about this is that the evidence destroys the defense's narrative. That Donna was a nice, sweet woman. She was a lovely mother, and she wasn't really involved in the divorce proceedings. The evidence of these emails destroys that narrative. We have evidence that Wendi Adelson emailed her attorney's emails to Donna, which, by the way, is really not a smart thing to do. Just pausing to say, Marissa Monroe, yes, the jury is still deliberating, as far as I know. I do have the feed. Yes, they are still deliberating. I have the feed up, and I will check it from time to time just to make sure. Sorry, lost my train of thought there for a second. Yes, this is not a good idea. You know that thing called attorney-client privilege? As long as the communication is just between you and your attorney, it's privileged. But the second that you email your attorney's email to a third party, you lose your attorney-client privilege. Anything that's in that email is no longer privileged because you shared it with a third party. So don't ever forward your attorney's emails to anyone else. You can tell people what's in the email if you want them to know, but don't send it to anyone. Yeah, they're still there. It is 7 p.m. Eastern time, and I need to get through this quickly because I do eventually have to go to the airport. Let me just check on my flight really quick, you guys. I apologize. I know that it's running late, but I just want to make sure. Okay, so let me send a quick text. bought me a little bit of time. Okay. Thanks guys for your patience while I get through this. So yes, we have evidence that Wendi emailed her lawyer's emails to Donna Adelson. Then Donna Adelson would email back with her changes and edits and suggestions. We have that as direct evidence. In one of those emails, Donna says, Dan needs to know there's no way in hell that you're going to stay in Tallahassee, stay at Florida State. Donna listed that this was a matter of life and death for everyone in the family, not just Donna, but also Harvey and even Charlie. Donna was even pre-screening dates for Wendi in Miami in January of 2013, before everything had been finalized. Then there was a really important thing that I don't think I caught it before. And I don't think that I necessarily felt the weight of this before, but Dan Markel sent an email to Wendi Adelson apologizing for the mistakes in the divorce and in the marriage and taking accountability for the things on his side of the street that he did wrong. And that tells me right there what kind of a man Dan Markel was. This, however, elicited a 5-page email back from Donna to Wendi, telling Wendi how she could use Dan's admissions to manipulate him and get what she wanted in the divorce. Then Georgia referenced all of the dirty, derogatory names that they called Dan Markel, and she showed us a visual of it. And I thought this was pretty compelling.
Little grandma certainly was angry. To support the argument that Wendi should be able to relocate because Dan was always traveling on work trips, the defendant sends Wendi this email. And it can...
Basically, Donna Adelson had cataloged every instance that Dan Markel had traveled for work, by the way, and been away from the boys since Ben was born. Just basically trying to say that he wasn't a good enough father because he was out of town a lot for work. Sigfredo Garcia knew that Dan Markel was going out of town. And the question is, how did he get that info? Well, Wendi knew that he was going out of town. Wendi told Charlie. Charlie told Catherine. Catherine told Sigfredo. Now, I realized Donna wasn't in that particular loop, but Donna also knew that Dan was going out of town because she heard it from Wendi as well. There was then a letter from one of Wendi's attorneys to, I think, Dan's attorney, that basically saying that if the money was not paid, that these people would become vexatious and frivolous litigants. So they knew about Donna being and Wendi being difficult in this legal system. And Donna was so angry at the relocation denial that at the end of her email, her pages and pages of email after it was denied, she signed off that she was too angry to continue writing. And then the next email that she wrote was that never, never, never give up email. See if I can find it for you here. Take control from him. We want him ticked off so he realized that he could lose control over his kids. It's time for action. It's time to take control of your life and not let Jibbers think he's just won anything.
There is evidence that the defendant controlled Wendi, she controlled Harvey, and she controlled Charlie. but she could not control Dan Markel. He wasn't.
She did bring in this Hitler Youth email, and Georgia said that the overarching theme that explains this entire case is that the end justifies the means. And that's what she basically intimated when she was talking about dressing up her kids as Hitler Youth. And then there was kind of a funny moment where she referenced Charlie Adelson saying that his mom just would not shut up. Let me see if I can get the right thing here.
Any and all means were justified, because not everything one has to do in life is comfortable or easy. Sometimes it's ridiculously hard. This is what passes for normal in this family.
So let me rewind a little because it was right before that.
Move to Tallahassee, ruin your entire life. Fight for yourself, Wendy. We'll be there to help you. Just don't tell us that what you need to do is move forward with a sense of peace. Can't have that, can we? That's giving up. Giving up on relocation was not an option for Donna Adelson. Neither was losing. Throughout the trial, the defense tried to distance themselves from these emails. One of the ways they did that was by trying to put them off on Harvey. They pointed out, hey, this is a joint email account.
Okay, sorry, I don't have the correct timestamp for that, but it was just really funny that Georgia literally said, Charlie could not get his mom to shut up about Wendy Adelson's divorce. Then Donna said to Wendy, don't sign anything until your dad and I have had a chance to look at it. Then, I'm sorry, I know that the court clips are pretty quiet, so I apologize about that. There's unfortunately nothing I can do about it. Then on October 12th of 2013, there was an email from Donna Adelson to Charlie Adelson about Dan Markel's email to Wendy Adelson. That was when Dan emailed Wendy and said, basically gave some hints to the fact that he was going to ask for supervised custody from Donna Adelson not being able to spend time with the kids, and that the divorce proceeding, the custody battle was not over. That was on October 12th. And then on October 31st, it was a really important day that day. That was the day that Wendy filed a motion to enforce their mediated settlement agreement, where Dan had to pay her the rest of the money. It was the day that she backed out of buying her home in Tallahassee that she had under contract. It was the same day that Charlie texted Donna telling her that he had talked Wendy out of buying that home, and Donna called him a miracle worker. It's also the same day that Charlie Adelson contacted Catherine Magbanawa and asked her if she knew anyone who could harm someone. And Catherine said, yes, she did. Then then later that evening, Charlie Adelson sent a picture of himself and Catherine Magbanawa to Donna Adelson. And I'm assuming that they had a conversation at some point where Charlie said, this is the woman who knows someone who can harm someone. Then on November 8th, Dan was spending time with the kids. They had been playing at the park, and he's buckling them into the seatbelt. And his 4-year-old son announced to him that Donna, Grandma Donna, whatever he calls Donna, said that you're stupid. Or actually, sorry, this was out loud at a family dinner. She says you're stupid. And then again, the next day or a couple days later, he was buckling them into the car and said again, Grandma says that you're stupid. And he said, why did Grandma say that? Because you're trying to take away her sunshines. Dan said, and who are the sunshines? And his child said, we are. And what occurred to me at this point, and I said this already in the live stream, so forgive me if you've heard it and I'm repeating it. Who says to a 4-year-old child, your father is stupid? because he's trying to take away my sunshines. Who says that to a 4-year-old child? A monster, an evil person. That's who. That creates so much psychological damage to a child, to hear someone that they love say something disparaging about their parent. That was when Dan decided to file the grandma motion after hearing these two announcements from the kids. He gave a preview of it in that email and basically said that he was going to try to terminate Wendy's parental rights. And that wasn't until December 16th. But Wendy forwarded that email to Donna the next day, and Donna replied, "Wow." Dan said in that email he fears that the best interest of the kids were not being pursued as much as what grandma wants. Then Donna reported to Charlie and to Rob Adelson that Dan was trying to depo Wendy to death, meaning do deposition after deposition after deposition, but she never was deposed in that case, not even once. Then the emails and the texts began ramping up all the way up until July of 2014, with Donna calling Dan things like asshole and fucker. Basically, Georgia Kappelman, there was a moment where she said that Donna Adelson was trying to erase Dan Markel. Oh, sorry. That was the wrong thing. She did say that at some point, that he was trying to be, that they were trying to erase him. But this text, there was a text that came in that Donna said about Harvey's birthday party, to erase this after reading,
etc.
We need to talk about
Tough time.
Dad's
really
birthday gift.
Stressed out. The asshole showed up at soccer yesterday, and she goes into a story about, he showed up at soccer and they got into it. And then she ends with such a fucker. Super amicable. Then we have this text on March 4th, switching gears. This is about the birthday gift.
I can't talk now, but I'll text you before we stop in Gainesville where I can go to the bathroom and have a moment of privacy. Then I'll call. Please pick up because I will have very limited alone time today, meaning without Harvey in earshot. Erase this text after you read it. We'll stop in about 5 minutes and I can speak to you privately about Dad's birthday gift when I'm out of the car. I have some good ideas. And then she noted that there were no gifts at Harvey's birthday party. And also, Harvey's birthday party couldn't have been a surprise party because Harvey was the one who sent the Evite. And we know that he sent the Evite. Then in March of 2014, Donna and Harvey rented a new condo in Miami with room for Wendy and the boys, and that's where they moved in after the shooting was done. Then Charlie started ramping up texts to Catherine Magmanawa saying, we need to get this done. In May of 2014, Wendy was added as a residence on the condo list. Then May 30th, Charlie delivered an envelope to Catherine Magmanawa detailing that he printed it out on a printer that couldn't be traced to him. He used gloves when handling what was inside and gave her instructions that she was not to open the envelope or touch anything that was inside either. Then we have the evidence that Donna had Dan Markel's make, model, and license plate of his vehicle. Then there was a text from Donna Adelson to Charlie about Dad's birthday. I know you'll come through with the gift to Charlie Adelson. Then there was some talk about possibly canceling the party. Rob Adelson testified that there was no illness or any other family conflict that would have caused the party to be canceled, except that it would have been the day after the first time that the shooter visited Miami to tail Dan Markel and was not successful. The birthday party was the next day, and Donna made a note in her calendar that she may need to cancel it. Then there's a picture of Wendi Adelson and Catherine Magbanua on the beach and in front of the Adelson's condo. Then on June 28th of 2014, Wendi sends a text to Rob Adelson with a picture of Jeff Lacasse saying, "Don't tell mom and dad about my new boyfriend," but they had already met him. We talked about why that was suspicious. And then there was this little moment where Donna gave a sort of almost imperceptible head shake when they showed her calendar on the screen. And I want you to see, I don't know if if you haven't been streaming the trial, then you probably have not seen any pictures of Donna Adelson's calendar, but this woman wrote everything down in these tiny squares on her calendar. And this is a calendar of the timeline of the week of Dan Markel's death. This is Wendi reconfirming dates that had already been confirmed. There was no need for her to do that. And checking on the jury, yes, they're still deliberating. As far as we know, they have not been released. The stream is still running and it's still live.
Dan Markel confirms, yes, I'm going to be in town to
watch when they switch to Donna's head, if Donna's face, if you can see the little head shake.
Get murdered, not specifically, but he's asked, are you going to be in town July 14th or the 18th? Those are the dates the killers were here. And this, despite the fact that the schedule for that week had already been decided way before this text. And Wendi was already scheduled to have the boys on that Wednesday, which is what she's asking about. She doesn't ask about the whole week that he's got the kids. She only asks about the 14th through the 18th. And I think the killers ended up going to Tallahassee on the 15th through the 18th. Obviously, Dan Markel was killed on the 18th. July 11th, 2014. The defendant comes back to Tallahassee.
I must have missed it, you guys. I apologize.
Dan Markel.
Even when I'm super prepared for these things.
The Evite addresses the boys by the last name Adelson. Their name was Markel. This is 2 weeks before the murder of Dan Markel. Even though the Evite says hosted by Donna and the party was for Harvey, the defense has suggested that it was Harvey and not Donna that sent the Evites. The evidence showed otherwise, and Corbett told you there was some follow-up from Donna with the Evite people. She sent that email. A text is sent from Wendi's phone to Dan Markel on July 6th of 2014.
Donna's looking pretty worse for wear here.
At the time this text.
So then, sorry, I forgot my camera's off. Then Georgia went through the timeline of the actual day of the shooting. She played the voicemail from Dan Markel to Wendi Adelson, basically saying, hey, let's try to work things out with, the upcoming possible change for the kids' school, and maybe we can take a walk. It was super kind. He greeted her nicely. It was just very kind and accommodating, and stunning that he could still speak to her that way, even after everything that she's done and said to and about him. Then they talked about Wendi turning around at the crime scene tape, and they talked about on the night that Dan Markel died, the day after the shooting, that Donna and Harvey visited Charlie Adelson's house and texted and said, outside your house. I believe that was when they said that. And then Catherine Magbanua came over that night, and Charlie answered the door with the gun in his hand. They both took it to Xanax and then fell asleep. And that was, Georgia saying, basically, this was not the actions of a man who was being extorted by an ex-girlfriend. Then there was Donna telling Robert not to talk to the FBI. And he said, don't worry. He said, I already have talked to the FBI. And she said, well, that's okay. You don't know anything anyway. Then there was a memorial for Dan Markel in Canada. Dan's kids were not allowed to attend. Then they talked about the 44 checks that Donna Adelson signed. 44 checks that Donna Adelson signed to Catherine Magbanua when she did not work at the Adelson Institute. She had no job description there, and there was no other explanation for those payments to be made. Not only that, but they showed a total lack of interest in who might have killed Dan Markel. There was nothing normal about the way that Donna Adelson acts after the murder. And that was Georgia basically saying, the defense's narrative is that she's just a normal grandmother, a normal mother. It's a normal family. She says there was nothing normal about the way she acted after the murder. Then at the bump, she said an innocent person, the first instinct you would have would be to look at the paper, but Donna never looks at the paper. An innocent person, their first instinct would be to get to safety, to get help. But instead, what Donna Adelson did was she led the bad guy to her grandkids. She gets accosted on the street by someone purporting to be a gang member. And instead of getting to safety or calling for help, she walks directly to the kid's school. The guy still could have been following her. This was not normal behavior. And then the worst part was the call to Charlie Adelson about the bump where Donna said, it involves the two of us. And I'm going to play just a little bit because this is where Georgia lists all of the direct evidence. I want to try to get it as close as possible.
Direct evidence. I know y'all like that. Some direct evidence. When Charlie asked Donna on State's 99 call A,
I know you probably can't hear this call because it's super quiet, but this is the one where Donna says it involves both of us, and they
other people. Well, probably both of us.
Right. Well, probably both of us.
Direct evidence. If anyone in that jury room wants to acquit her, make them tell you how that is not a confession.
That's the part that I loved the most about this closing statement. Make them tell you how that's not a confession. Then right after this, of course, Charlie calls Catherine Magbanawa about the bump. And then she also noted that Wendi Adelson called Charlie for 18 minutes on the morning of the shooting and then drove by the crime scene. Then we have Donna Adelson saying that it's not a good idea to call the police. Georgia did a great job of completely shutting down the extortion idea. And then Donna Adelson said that Dan Markel was haunting her from her grave. She later said she believed her family was cursed. And then the jury was removed after an objection. Then there's just a couple of other little things that I want to play for you. There was a break. And for 11, here we go.
From each other. The primary risk of a conspiracy is that you're doing it with other people, right? You can get caught. Somebody can squeal. Somebody could give you up. And that's why the conspiracy is not shaped like this. Rather,
oh my
they're
gosh,
all huddled up together.
Sorry, that was so jarring for me when she put that up on the screen. I was like, what?
From each other. The primary risk of a conspiracy is that you're doing it with other people, right? You can get caught. Somebody can squeal. Somebody could give you up. And that's why the conspiracy is not shaped like this.
Do you guys know what that is? It's basically a satanic pentagram. And when she put that up there, my jaw was on the floor. It was brilliant. It was a brilliant move.
Rather, they're not all huddled up together. They're going to be more like train cars. This is the way we see the communication flow throughout the course of the conspiracy. The best way to insulate yourself from your co-conspirators is to organize the conspiracy like a train car, with each car only communicating with the one in front and the one behind. That way, if someone gets caught or cooperates with law enforcement, they won't have enough information on you to give you up. It's also very important to position yourself within the conspiracy such that those that have the most information on you are those most loyal to you. And that is exactly what Donna Adelson did. To be guilty of conspiracy, it's not necessary for the defendant to say any particular word or do any particular act. But in this case, she did do that. We have all those words and acts that we went over that directly tie her. They are direct evidence tying her to this conspiracy, plus all the powdered sugar dust. Don't let the way she thought she was going to get away with this be the way she gets away with it. Render a verdict that does justice. Find her guilty. Thank you.
And once again, I just wanted to stand up and clap when she finished. I thought that was an excellent way to finish that out. Find her guilty. She did a great job. Now, Jackie Fulford, as I said, she pounded the table. She yelled. She sounded desperate. She sounded angry. But I'm gonna play one part that I think was the most profound thing that she said. Let me see if I can find it for you. And then I do have to get going, so I'm wrapping this up, guys. Don't worry. You're not going to have to listen to much of Jackie Fulford.
Take that evening when they leave their home.
That was it. That was the most profound thing she said. You want to hear it again? Okay. Where are we? 6:15:10.
Take that evening when they leave their home.
Yep, that was it right there. You want to hear it one more time? Sorry, I was feeling very snarky by the time I had to listen to her for this long.
Take that evening when they leave their home.
Very, very profound, Jackie. Thank you so much for that. I will tell you a couple of the things that she said. She said that the defense were the only ones, and you can just be outraged with me. It's fine. We're going to be outraged for a minute together. She said the defense were the only ones saying good things about Dan Markel. They were the ones who've been classifying it as a bitter custody battle for the last 10 years. If you believe that they were trying to take away Dan Markel's kids, then you didn't listen to the evidence. Their argument isn't evidence. She also said hoop-de-doo. Thought that was pretty cool. They didn't break the case because they had evidence. The case broke because Luis Rivera confessed and wanted to come forward and participate. And then she talked about the actual murder, and she talked about how Luis and Sigfredo Garcia sat in wait for Dan Markel. She made a mistake when she said that the last mention of the relocation petition, now this I have to go back and see because I was like, did I hear that correctly? But I couldn't rewind it because I was streaming for you guys. 45:30.
That shows that my client, Donna Adelson, was continuing on a rampage about relocation. The last email that they showed you today that my client wrote about relocation was July the 19th of 2013. The divorce was final.
Okay, 2013. Because I thought she said 2014. And I was like, yeah, that's because, anyway. July the 19th of 2014 was when the shooting took place. Then she calls them crazy emails. She said my client sent these crazy emails. She kind of goes off the rails, sort of saying that Donna's crazy. Her emails are crazy. She brings in, again, all of the names that they called Dan Markel, which why would you want to emphasize that? I don't understand. 49.
Did say ugly things about Danny Markel. During the divorce, she did. And the state has put them in. This is State Exhibit 64. And they have emails going up through July the 11th of 2014.
And I think you'll also enjoy Jackie Fulford saying the F word. So plug your ears for a second if you don't want to hear it.
These are the bad names that my client called Danny Markel. During the course of a divorce where her daughter is constantly venting to her about what she says Danny is doing, she said some really bad names, and I'm going to say them, although you shouldn't say bad words in court. She called him some ugly stuff. The first one that they wanted to put in was from 2011. He was killed in 2014. They introduced this email from March the 28th of 2011 at 64A, and inside that email, they claim shows the hatred for Danny Markel. And you want to know why? According to their exhibit list here, because Mrs. Adelson referred to Danny's parents as, quote, the royal couple. And she and Wendy were bantering back and forth about some issues with Mr. Markel's parents. That's not hatred on Danny. It's not even hatred on his parents. We're sitting here with murder charges because she did something like that, called somebody a royal couple. She said other bad things. She called Danny a major fucker. Jibbers, which Wendy Adelson testified that she came up with that nickname for him, a religious zealot, and Wendy testified that the issues in their marriage included matters of he had now become more strict in their religion than she wanted to follow. That was one of their problems. She called him a royal jackass, a piece of shit, a fucker, crazy, a bastard, and she called him Elvis. That's why we are sitting here today. That is hatred for somebody. That proves they wanted to have him killed. Are you serious? You call somebody some bad names and that means you wanted them dead? My client has lack of any ability to stop herself from saying things. She can't do it. And I'm not trying to be offensive to her, but she can't. And all of these emails that they have introduced prove it. She is not a one-word person. She goes on and on and on and on. And they believe that she had Danny Markel murdered because she said some bad words. There's not a lick of evidence in here that they submitted of what she did prior to July the 18th, 2014, where she said not a single word, that she wanted him killed. She was planning to have him killed. She was going to find somebody to kill him. She was going to pay somebody to kill him. She was going to kill him. That she was glad he was dead. That's not in here. And this is it. This is.
Okay, so you can see Jackie Fulford's demeanor here. Now, people are saying that the verdict is in. I'm going to switch tabs over here, and maybe I'm just going to have to miss my plane. I don't know. Oh, shoot. Let me try again. Sorry, guys. Share screen. Donna is crying already. Goodness gracious. Courtroom's filling up. My phone is blowing up. Whew. Well, it's kind of fortuitous that we're here together already streaming when the verdict came in. I probably can get someone to help with the stream. I do need to leave. I just did a post on my Facebook page, so hopefully more people will join us. Yes, Eliza, me too, holding hands in a metaphysical way. This view of the courtroom is one we haven't seen much of because it partially shows the jury box, but they're just showing people coming in, and Donna looks upset already. If they deliberated that quickly, I'm gonna guess it's probably guilty. Let me see if I can get some help. Let's see what I can do here. All right, guys, I'm trying to, yeah, thanks for being here, you guys. I'm gonna put a new banner up here.
Before the jurors are brought in and the verdict is published, I'd like to make sure everyone understands whatever the verdict will be in the case. I do not want there to be any gesturing or anyone making any movements that you either agree or disagree with the verdict. We are going to respect what the jury's decision is, and we are not going to subject them to any displays of emotion, whether it be from the gallery or the parties. If anyone believes they are not capable of following this instruction, I'd ask you to step outside at this time. Mrs. Adelson also as well, once the verdict is read, again, I'm going to advise you, do not have any displays of emotion as best you can. You are to control yourself. Do you understand?
This is a little bit stressful because I was literally about to leave for the airport, and now the verdict is in right now. So I texted a possible helper.
Please bring in the jurors.
I'm going to check my flight one more time just to see if it hasn't been delayed even farther.
Please remain seated when the jurors come in this particular time. If the jury foreperson could please rise. Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict? If you please can hand the verdict form to the bailiff. Having reviewed the verdict form, it is in its proper order. At this time, I will publish the verdict. We, the jury, find as follows as the count one of the indictment, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Mrs. Adelson, control yourself. Count two. We, the jury, find as follows as the count two of the indictment, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Count 3. We, the jury, find as follows as the count 3 of the indictment: solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder. And it is signed and dated by the foreperson. One moment. Members of the jury, the bailiff will escort you to the jury room. Mrs. Adelson, while this was not the outcome I'm sure that you desired, there will not be any further outbursts in front of the jury. If you cannot control yourself, I am going to have to determine if you will be removed from the remainder of this process. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Do you need a moment to collect yourself? Before the jurors are brought back in, we will take a brief 2-minute break. Please give her tissues if she needs them. When the jurors are brought back into the room, does the defense wish to have the jurors polled before they are discharged?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well.
Okay, guys, while they're on this 2-minute break, I'm furiously trying to create another live so that I can go live
Back in the jurors so we can conclude with their portion of the trial.
as soon as we're finished with this portion. I will go to another live. So I'm trying to get that set up right now.
Members of the jury, before I discharge you for this evening, I am briefly going to poll you concerning whether your verdict is unanimous at the request of one of the parties. When you hear your last name, please appropriately respond.
Thank you so much, Susie Catherine. They're protecting the identity of the jurors right now by polling them.
To you, before you are discharged, please listen carefully. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for your time and consideration of this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges that are enjoyed by jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We have recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain their private affair as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about the jury's work. Although you are at liberty to speak with anyone about your deliberations, you are also at liberty to refuse to speak to anyone. A request to discuss either your verdict or your deliberations may come from those who are simply curious, from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, from attorneys, or elsewhere. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. With that being said, I want to extend my thanks on behalf of the entire Second Circuit for your service in this matter. You are discharged. Have a good evening. As to the jury's verdict, with the jury having found the defendant guilty of the 3 charges of the indictment, is the defense asking for a pre-sentence report on counts 2 and 3. As to count 1, the penalty is statutory, and essentially there is no modification for it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Sandy.
Well, pre-sentence investigation and report is ordered by the court as to counts 2 and 3. As to count 1, is there any reason why we cannot proceed to sentencing on this matter?
Your Honor, we would request an opportunity to ensure that our client is okay before we proceed to sentencing. It's my understanding that Charlie Adelson wasn't sentenced right away. We're asking for the same courtesy.
Very well. Court then will set a separate sentencing date.
May I inquire whether the family members that are present would like to give victim impact now or at the future date?
Go ahead.
We're going to victim impact statements this evening.
It's fine. Right there in front of the lectern. If you please can identify yourself for the record.
Yes, my name is Ruth
I'm
Mark.
worrying that way, 'cause you're
Sorry?
gonna- I'm worried you're going to trip.
Okay, I already did. My name is Ruth Markel.
You may
I-
give your impact statement, ma'am.
Thank you, Judge Everett. To the Honorable Judge Everett, my name is Ruth Markel. I am the mother of the late Dan Markel. I stand before you today to express the profound sadness and grief that Dan's family and I have endured since his tragic murder. We have lost a treasure. My son Dan's life was cut tragically short at 41 years old. For 11 years, we have been forced to to a life filled with unimaginable pain and heartbreak. Dan's father, Phil, and his sister, Shelley, share in this unending sorrow. Dan was a devoted father, brother, and son. Dan's life was marked by his devotion to family, education, and community. He was a loving, caring, and inspiring person. His academic journey included studying politics and philosophy at Harvard University, earning a master's degree later in political theory from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and the Emmanuel College in Cambridge, and later going back to Harvard to get a law degree. Dan was a prolific scholar and did start, co-founded the influential Prof's blog. His energy, drive, and sociability greatly enriched the FSU College of Law. Dan's life was filled with passion, music, dance, sports, travel, and people. But of all my son's accomplishments, however, I am most proud of the devoted father Danny was to his two sons, Benjamin and Lincoln. Dan was present, loving, and supportive, always putting his children's well-being first. He regularly attended the boys' daycares, reading with them. His office was filled with their drawings, and his home, his living room, filled with their toys. Dan was the boys' hero, and they have been forced to grow up without a father. Dan's murder has shattered our family and caused deep permanent pain. This was a particularly senseless crime, and the murder was particularly insensible. It was not revenge. Dan was a law-abiding and respectful citizen, an active father, and a living son. His life was devoted to teaching and helping others. The pain and suffering of Dan's murder goes well beyond other families too. That is why I wrote the book, A Mother's Unveiling, The Unveiling, A Mother's Reflection on Murder, Grief, and Trial Life. In my unrelenting grief, I turned to advocacy, to feel purpose, and to help others with these tragic losses. I have found meaning and comfort to connect with others who want to serve justice. To all the community of journalists, TV programs, podcasters, Tallahassee communities, and the allies who have put their hearts in keeping Danny's story alive, we are full of thanks. To law enforcement and prosecutors, our gratitude is beyond for their dedicated, careful perseverance in seeking justice for Danny and our family. If Tallahassee is known for football, Tallahassee should be known for the prosecution and for law enforcement. They have done an outstanding job. These extraordinary efforts underscore the brutal truth of our family's story. Danny's murder was orchestrated by his former mother-in-law, Donna Adelson, and other co-conspirators, and is a crime of cruelty. It is a murder of grief, a murder of selfishly prioritizing one's own desires over what is just or right. And at its core, this was a murder of convenience, so that one grandmother could live closer to her grandchildren. She killed their father and ripped the children from the other grandparents' lives. Donna Adelson's crimes against Dan began long before his murder. She belittled Dan in front of his children. She spread lies about him and contributed to a brutal separation between Dan and Wendi. She rented the house, and Dan came home and he found that Wendi and the boys were gone with most of their belongings. He called this devastation Pearl Harbor. Donna's eagerness for Wendi to divorce Dan and to relocate to South Florida led her to increasingly devise desperate schemes. Despite these efforts, the court ruled that Wendi could not move the boys away from their loving father. Failing to achieve her goal through legal means, Donna finally resorted to orchestrating Dan's murder. She plotted, planned, and paid for his murder. Donna's crimes led to further devastation. Her middle son, Charlie, was convicted and sentenced to a life in prison for his role in facilitating Danny's murder for hire. Can you imagine a mother involving a son to complete a murder? Donna's eldest son, Rob, an honest and decent man, is estranged from the family. And her younger child, Wendy, has decided once again to relocate to another state. Her actions and those of her co-conspirators have caused children to lose their parents. Catherine McManus, Freda Garcia, and Charlie Adelson, also convicted, are all convicted for life and have lost access to their children. Prior to her arrest, Donna's recorded phone calls with Charlie reveal their lack of a moral compass or capacity for self-reflection. She blames external forces for her family's curse. They're outside of her, but she is the curse, and lashes out angrily at witnesses who took the brave step to testify. Her modus operandi has always been to run from Tallahassee and then to try to flee to Vietnam. For our family, there is no such prospect for escape. Danny's absence, and that leaves a hole at the center of our lives, no matter where we go. Yet Dan's murder was not enough for Donna. His death was not enough. Danny had to be fully erased from his beloved sons. The boy's last name was ever changed, an extraordinary decision to excise the Markel name from Phil's only grandsons who shared his last name. And after the first arrests were made, Donna didn't allow the Markel family to have access for over 6 years. It was only when there was a phenomenal Tallahassee advocacy group that passed the Markel Act. The passage of this bill was immediately followed by our first invitation to see the boys after the arrest. The door only cracked open. Despite these efforts, we remain excluded from the boys' lives. We were not at their bar mitzvahs or graduations. We have extremely highly choreographed visits and communications. We only wait for the day that Benjamin and Lincoln will visit their father and his grave, and his father's history, and his grave in Toronto. We want nothing more. The facts of Danny's murder, are difficult to swallow. The experiences Phil, Shelley, and I have been forced to suffer are profound as homicide survivors and victims of the criminal system. The lives of Danny's 2 sons, our grandchildren, were forever turned upside down by this crime. Benjamin and Lincoln were only preschoolers when their father was murdered, and now they are forced to confront and try to understand the unthinkable crimes of murder and the Adelsons' involvement. Our lives will never return to normal. For those who love Danny and for those who Danny loved, there is no escape from the wicked effects of what Donna Adelson set in motion, carried out, and paid for, and for many years enjoyed the aftermath of. Donna Adelson has caused immense devastation and an untimely, undeserved murder through her actions. While no trial or verdict can ever heal the profound wounds caused by Dan's murder, justice must be served. I respectfully ask the court to impose the maximum sentence on Donna Adelson. Her lack of cooperation and remorse throughout the case demands justice, the justice that Dan's life and memory fully deserve. We are immensely grateful to the court for its careful and compassionate deliberation. Respectively, Ruth Markel.
Thank you, Ms. Markel. Are there any other victim impact statements this evening?
One more.
If you please could tell us your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Phil Markel. I'm Danny's father. Judge Everett, I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the impact of Donna Adelson's actions on my families and the families of so many others. While this victim impact statement is addressed to you, Your Honor, it is also intended for the Adelson family, Harvey, Charlie, Wendy, and particularly Donna. I would like them to understand and reflect on the deep and irreparable damage they have caused. The pain that they have caused my family is obvious and permanent, but they have also caused lifelong harm to their own immediate family and so many other families and children around. Donna's selfishness, cruelty, and complete disrespect for human life, along with that of her co-conspirators, have left families forever broken. Louis Rivera, his children have no father. Catherine Magbanoa and Sigfredo Garcia, their children have no parents. Charlie Adelson, his son, Roman, has no father. Rob Adelson and his wife and their 2 children have lost their uncle and grandparents. Shelley and Ian, my daughter, their 3 children, my grandchildren, are left without an uncle and are separated from their cousins. Of course, their heinous and callous actions have left me, Ruth, and Shelley without our Danny, and Ben and Lincoln without their father. For anyone to commit such a cold-blooded, unprovoked act of murder is horrific. For Donna, someone who claims to care so much about Ben and Lincoln, her sun shines. Her actions are beyond comprehension. She has harmed forever the people she claims to have loved. In the Jewish custom, we have an expression to always wish others to live to 120 years of age. For Donna, I wish her to live to 120, alone in her jail cell. I wish that every day of her remaining days, she thinks about the harm she has caused to so many, especially those 2 boys she claims to have loved so much. For these reasons, Your Honor, I ask the court sentence Donna Adelson to the maximum possible sentence. And my only short question to Donna, was it worth it? Respectfully, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Markel. Are there any other matters that the court needs to address this evening, Ms. Koppelman? With the PSI being ordered, the court will pronounce the sentence as to counts 2 and 3 after it's been completed. The parties have had an opportunity to review the pre-sentence investigation report and make any objections if they believe they need to. As to the 3 counts that the jury has found the defendant guilty of, I will adjudicate her guilty at this time, but the sentence will be pronounced as to the 3 counts at a later date. She is remanded for sentencing at this time. Lieutenant Henry, please notify the commander at the jail that the appropriate screening needs to take place to ensure that the defendant is in an area where she is not subject to any self-harm. For a case management date coming up, what would the parties request?
Ms. Dugan's October court date earlier.
Leave that is 10/14. Is that correct, Ms. Dugan?
Yes, sir.
October 14th for case management at 2:30 p.m. That will be in the normal courtroom 3B. Patricia, if you can make sure that the notice goes to DOC so they are aware that the PSI needs to be completed as soon as possible. Thank you. We are in recess at this time. We will reconvene on October 14th. Have a good evening, everyone.
Okay, guys, I'm not sure if you can tell, but there's two of me down at the bottom of the screen. I am remote on my phone. Went to go pick up my son because he's going to take me to the airport. And I'm going to run back and grab my computer because the problem is I'm streaming this on my computer and I have to take my computer with me to the airport. And as soon as I leave my Wi-Fi at home, the stream would have died. So I'm really glad timing worked out for this, for us to be done. It's a little bit, the good thing is San Antonio is a small airport. I do have pre-check, and I think that, the airport's not super far away from my house. So I think I'm going to make it. I hope I do. And if I don't, I'll let you guys know. But thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that the verdict came in so quickly. I'm frankly stunned that it did. I'm not really too shocked about Dawn's reaction. I didn't expect her to be able to keep her composure. I'm definitely not shocked about the verdict. And you may have heard the judge announce just now that sentencing will be pronounced on October 14th at 2:30 p.m. They have to do all those pre-sentencing reports and everything. I realize we still have sound coming in from the court, but I can't control it. Okay, so that stream just ended. So anyway, yeah, I can't really give a reaction at the moment, but I'm sure that we will do we'll do a video later from Denver. But I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who gave super chats there in the last little bit. I showed them on the screen, but didn't want to interrupt the feed. So thank you so much to everybody for all your support. Please don't forget to like on your way out. And I'm just arriving back at my house right now to pick up my laptop. So I am going to end the stream in just a couple of minutes here, but thank you again for being here. Thank you for being here to witness justice for Dan Markel. And I will be back with you to talk about the actual verdict. Probably not this evening because I'll get into Denver pretty late, but most likely early tomorrow morning or so, we'll have a different reaction video for you. I think I was echoing there for a second. All right, so I'm gonna, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm gonna go ahead and tear down my equipment now. So I hope you guys have a great night. Thanks for being here with me. Take good care of yourselves. Hug your families. Love you guys. See you soon.